What's up, everyone? You're tuned in to the Pennsylvania Rock Show, episode number 792. Happens to be the day after the show has turned 21 years old. It debuted on September 14th, 2004. Back then, I didn't know that I was podcasting or live streaming or whatever. I just knew that I was doing live radio over the internet. With that said, we are going to be playing a lot of old school music from back in the first couple years that the show existed, which is why you heard our normal opener for like the first 6 years of the show off the top, which was Step 11's Seven Sin Martyr. We followed that up with Tony Marinaki, All the Answers, featuring Brian Schaefer on vocals. And then we heard really old school, like 1997 Hybrid and the song Demise. And if you want to know about those three songs in particular and Creep Walking Backwards, which we'll be playing a little bit later, you can tune in to the Grassroots show on 97.7 FM on Sunday, the 21st of September at 7 p.m. I will be on the show, and you'll get to hear a whole bunch of stuff about the history of the Pennsylvania Rock Show. But with that said, tonight we're going to go back in time with the DeLorean, maybe, to the early years of Philadelphia's music scene with my guests, Mick Michaels and Antonio. I'm going to mess his name up. Antonio Aloia? Maybe? Maybe not. He kind of made a face. Go ahead. Tell me what I said wrong.
It's Aloia. I mean, you actually said it much better than most people. They added a H in there, like Aloha, than H, but you pronounced it well.
Okay,
Thank
it was
you.
close. All right, so 1978 to 1992. I wouldn't have guessed that. Well, let's start there. Antonio, are you even old enough for 1978?
Unfortunately, I'm not. But but I am a historian by education, so it makes me old enough for it.
Got it.
You're old enough for research.
Because I have this nice gray beard going, and I was 1 in 1978. So maybe 2 if it was November.
There you go. Yeah, I'm not even sure which month we really started in, so maybe. Yeah, it could be anywhere in 78. How about that?
So first of all, for those of you that are just tuning in, if you look right under Mick, there is a really odd looking website address. That is a share link from Amazon, which takes you to the book that we're about to talk about tonight, which is When We Rocked, the story of Philadelphia rock music scene, 1978 to 1992. There. That makes me think of the band Chuck's Beta, who used to come on the show back in the early 2000s, and all their song titles were that long. Okay, so tell us a little bit about the book and like how did you two come together and produce this thing, basically.
It's a project that I've wanted to do for quite a long time. I had the opportunity back in the 80s to be part of the Philadelphia music scene, the rock music scene, both as a fan and a player. And to me, it was, always it was an exciting time. And being a young kid, it was the big time for us. And that, to me, that's all we thought about, right? Like, I mean, I remember we were actually just talking about it not too long ago. Like in the 80s, we never thought about going to LA or anything like that. At least not the group of musicians that I was hanging with. So anyway, it was something that I always thought about over the years, and just thought that maybe one day, who knows. And working with the Cosmic View over the years, talking to different artists and getting more information and things like that, I wanted to really pursue it. So we finally, kind of jump started and said, hey, let's dive into this. And honestly, not sure how we were going to do it at first. The scope was always about the artists and backdrop by the Philadelphia scene, but how we were going to present it kept changing. But bringing Antonio on board, he's got some books under his belt. He's a great researcher. Like I said, he's a historian. He's a musician himself. So that really played into a lot of how this project developed. But it was kind of like to be straightforward. I got tired of hearing about L.A. and everything that happened there, and Philly always being overlooked. And we had a number of bands that come out of here. I mean, even before the '80s, and when metal started really picking up and all. I mean, we had the Philly Soul Sound, and there was a lot of artists that came out then, and Philly was the rock and roll capital before L.A. and Hollywood, came about. So there was all that. So we cover the '78 to '92 because that's when it kind of for rock became big. But we also talk about everything before and a little bit after, so we can bookend it, but also provide some context of like, hey, it's not just it just magically appeared. I mean, we had to talk about the rise of radio, 1940s, 50s, 60s with American Bandstand, and those early forms of rock and roll, or what could be considered true rock and roll, and everything else is just rock. And then we had to at the tail end with '92, we pushed it a little bit further to like '95, '96. Just to kind of round up some things, because the '90s wound up being, as per everyone else has said, that turning point within both the music industry and the rock scene and the metal scene, especially hair metal. But everything changed from not like 90, 91, 92 on. So we had to give some explanation onto why that was, and why there was a shift, not only with how the music industry was going, but also the shift in where sorry, where the audience was going, which was actually going more into pop, but pop that was infused with rap, hip hop, like a resurgence of R&B, and a whole bunch of other newer things that were coming out in that era. So yeah, we wanted to make sure that we had some context to not just like, hey, these are the glory days, but it's the glory days plus everything that built up to it, and then kind of led to the artists that we talked to that were included in the book. I mean, we gave some context of their story following that heyday, right? The time that some of these bands were big, and they were having huge successes, and then when the market changed, or when the carpet got pulled out, or the plug got pulled, when grunge and alternative came in, where did these artists end up? What did they do? What was their mindset at that point? Because for some of these guys, it was a shock to the system. So we wanted to cover as much of that as possible, like Antonio said, to really give those years of '78 to '92 a stronger context. But this happened because of what came after, or what came before, and then of course what came after was kind of a product of what was happening in that time frame.
Now, you mentioned that some of the artists you talked to. Do you want to mention some of them, whether they're from the scene or some of the big names that you have mentioned in the summary too?
Yeah, well, we talked to Johnny D, and Johnny writes the foreword of the book. I mean, and those that were in the Philadelphia area, Johnny was in World War III, and before that he was in Fragile, and then he went to Wasted in the UK with Pete Way. Came back, was part of the Britny Fox surgeons, and then after the big change, he went and he's been working with Doro and Takedo now, and he's been with a host of other bands in and out over the years. We talked to Billy Childs, bass player from Britny Fox. We talked to Reggie Wu from Heaven's Edge. We talked to Dave Weakley, bass player from Teeze or Roughhouse, and Mike Natalini, drummer at Teeze, Roughhouse. He was also after his hair metal days, right after that '92 time frame, he went on to become the drummer to the Tramps up until the band, until the Tramps, retired, called it quits. So we're some of these guys, they kept going, and they found other avenues to do things. To keep, some of them went into the cover, cover scene during the '90s, because that boosted back up, kind of like it kind of almost reflected what's happening now and what happened in the late 70s. So sometimes, as you can see, especially like, in life, you got this circle, things just come back around over and over again. So, being an original artist myself, I'm holding out to when we come back around to the original scene. And then we, because of the work that we do with the Cosmic View, we were able to incorporate a lot of national artists into the storyline. Getting their perspective from a different viewpoint, like Tramp from White Lion, and the late Jack Russell, KK Downing from Judas Priest, Lorraine Lewis from Femme Fatale, Geoff Tate. Chips Enuff from Enuff's Enough. So like Stephen Pearcy from Ratt. Like, we were able to work in some of the stuff that we talked to them about, not necessarily about Philly, but about the scene. So the book goes back and forth to showing Philly, paralleling what was happening in the national scene, but then how it kind of ran its own tangent at the same time, which was, I think, what made Philly strong and unique. That it had a rock scene that was way different than LA, and it had a hair metal scene, but not the hair metal scene that when you think of hair metal, like when Poison left Pennsylvania and they went out to LA, but it wasn't necessarily that type of hair metal. It's their hair metal here in Philly still had a bit of an edge, and of course the rise of thrash that was happening here in Philadelphia, and of course just right over the bridge in Jersey, which played a huge role in how things were evolving. So
I have a question. I have a question about that bridge. So, as you know, I was there in July. Why was it free to go to Jersey and they charged me $6 to come back to Pennsylvania?
Yeah, it's crazy, right? Free to get over, but coming back, baby.
I made a wrong turn and it cost me $6.
Yeah, that bridge.
Let's take a quick break and we'll come back. We have about 7 minutes in the second segment.
All right.
We'll be right back. Hey, it's Bill. You are tuned in to episode 792 of the Pennsylvania Rock Show. I should have mentioned what songs we were going to listen to. You heard Cage Stranded, which was really one of the songs that pushed the Pennsylvania Rock Show onto the streaming platforms of Unsigned Online, which had a different name that I can't remember currently. But that was the first streaming radio station we were on. And then you also heard Creep Walking Backwards. When you listen to the intro, I make reference to that song, and you can hear a little bit of Seven Sin Martyr in the background of that intro, which was the first song we listened to tonight. With me are Tony and Mick, the authors of When We Rocked, the story of Philadelphia rock scene, 1978 to 1992. So, as I said, we're not going to have quite as long in this segment, but first of all, I mentioned it's on Amazon, and if you're watching the video, the link is right below Mick. If he would kindly point, there you go. I could try and read that, but none of you are going to remember it. So I will put it in the show notes. It is an Amazon link. So we talked a little bit about what the story is in the book. Other than ordering on Amazon, is there any other way to get a copy of it?
They can go to our official website, whenwerockedphilly.com. Of course, then you can link to Amazon there, but you can also purchase autographed copies by the two of us, and you get a sticker so you can put on the back of your car or on a shirt or on your forehead, and it just says "Get Rock" and then the website. And then I think there's another package that includes one of these cool shirts. And you can go on to my Facebook page as well, and you'll see them. I think I even have them on my band's page as well, so you can check that out. But yeah, whenwerockedphilly.com and order yourself an autographed copy of this slick-looking thing right here.
First time authors for both of you, or have either of you written?
For me, Antonio's written some other historical type books, more of the highbrow kind. Highbrow kind, yeah. Actually, technically, this is my third book. I'm working on a fourth book right now. But yeah, no, this was fun. This was actually a little bit different than my other books, because my other books I do mainly by myself with my own research, my own writing. But working with Mick, or just working with somebody else is quite different, because I work a certain way, sometimes a certain pace. Mick works at a certain way, a certain pace, and his way is a little bit faster.
I think I heard something about that before, like when we were talking about songwriting with your band.
I have a bit of a reputation, but it's okay. I mean, yeah, nobody gets hurt. Things wind up getting done, and even if you have to wait a little bit, things are there when you need to go and complete them. But a lot of it was, hey, we're going to do some interviews, but in the meantime, can we try and research, X, Y, Z? Sure, I can do that. It's like, oh, okay, cool. You're done with that. Okay, I just got the transcripts in for these interviews. Can you help me, mind them or make them look good or whatever? It's like, yeah, sure. So it was always one thing after another. Not in a bad way. It always kept me a little busy too. But it was like, hey, let's find something, let's put it on the page, let's put it on the bigger picture, and then see where else we can fill in some things, whether it's with another interview or another thing that we need to bring in. Because I know in the beginning we were kind of going back and forth. Should we include, like, how far back should we include, like the pre-modern Philadelphia history? I mean, we weren't going all the way back to its founding with the Quakers, and then when the Quakers came out of power, there wound being like a post-Revolutionary War British musical invasion, which was really, really weird. But like, if you look at the the historical record and how the United States went through its own history and how politically it was always close to Britain, it wound up setting the stage for 1964 with the Beatles and that British invasion. So there was really I mean, that's considered the British invasion of music, and then we have the second British invasion in the late 70s, early 80s. But there really was one before those two. But they're talking more about modern music. But listen, the thing is we kept going because, you're interviewing so many people, and you start and you stop, and we had gotten some artists that started the interview process, wanted to be a part of the book, and then they decided they didn't want to be a part of the book. We had artists turn us down, said that they weren't interested in rehashing old stuff, or, hey, we're 40 years past it, I'm doing something else now. So, and there was, unfortunately, there was some people that we couldn't locate, or get to talk to, that we were hoping that we would, but no one had any information on them. And then sadly, there were a number of artists that have passed, and we weren't able to talk to them. But like I said from the beginning, this has always been about the artist and its backdrop within Philadelphia, and it's an underdog story, right? It's about a group of dreamers, of people that were willing to sacrifice a lot for that dream, and take it to as far as they could. And some guys got to the top, and some guys kept in the middle, and some guys just stayed at the bottom. And that was another thing that we wanted to make sure that it wasn't just going to be like, hey, here's all the superstars, right? I mean, because then the regular person may have not connected with it. We got to talk with bands that were mid tier, and then bottom tier, or some guys that just never got out of the garage type of thing. So having all that included, I think, really set the stage of what was happening and how people in this area were inspired to really go for their dream in that sense, right? I mean, again, I was a teenager and I was playing in bands and I was playing in some venues where they didn't ever ask me what my age was. And then there were other venues that we couldn't get in because of our age. But so we made other concessions. We played roller rinks, and we talk about that in the book. We played, house parties and things of that nature, just to get out there and play. And however you did it, and whenever you did come into that scene between 78 and 92, there was a different vibe within each couple years. So depending on when you started, this was that scene. And then if you came in a couple years later, there were more places to play. And by 85, original music, rock music, heavy metal music was being pushed, and there was less and less covers happening. Prior to that, they didn't want anything to do with original music. Kind of sounds like right now in the music scene, but
sounds a lot like Pittsburgh.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like Philadelphia today. So you know what I mean. But so there was a lot. By the end of the '80s, there was a host of places to play here. In the early '80s, mid '80s, Tom Kiefer talks about it, and drummer Fred Curry talks about it. That there was only a couple places for bands to play their original music, but that was at that time. But by '87, '88, that changed.
And like with that too, like if we focus just on say Cinderella, Heaven's Edge, and Britny Fox, like they all wound up making it again to some degree on the national and international. So they were, their focus was somewhere else besides the local scene here in Philadelphia. So like what makes sense, they only knew up to say where they made it. Everything else after that, they really didn't get to see what what was happening in the wake of their signing. So they're like, oh yeah, we don't know, or there wasn't a lot of places to play. But then afterwards, I mean, it was, the high schools, roller rinks, more smaller bars and venues just started to pop up. Because people saw that they wanted
the music.
original music, and that's why we also really wanted to put in the musicians of all levels. I mean, it's kind of like if you think about any sort of war history, it's great to have the top people involved because they're the ones making the grand decisions, but it's also really good to get the soldiers' perspective because they're the ones that are actually going out and carrying out
fighting the war.
So it's like, hey, it looks good on paper, but then when you're actually on the ground, you're kind of holding blood and guts and everything.
That's what made Saving Private Ryan so good.
So I do want to draw a parallel to what you're describing and what happened here on the Pennsylvania Rock Show. So you mentioned house shows. And that's basically what I was live streaming when this started. Bands would come here and play live in my living room. And it was a big party. And the later into the show, the less understandable it got. I'll let you read into that. Not me. I was always understandable. I was also the person telling people, hey, you got to stop. You got to go to bed because I have to get up and go to work. With that said, I have 4 more tracks we're going to play tonight. 3 of them used to hang out at like every single episode. There was somebody here in this room during the live show from Rockabilly Junction, Amber Alexis, and Terry McCausland. And then the other band we're going to play is Doppler Effect. All of those bands have, and all the bands have played earlier, and a lot more, but have a very special part in the formation of the show. And again, if you want to hear some of those stories, listen to the Grassroots Show on 97.7 FM You go to 97.7 Rocks for those of you that aren't within the listening area. This coming Sunday, September 21st at 7 p.m. Eastern, and you'll hear about those songs. But we're gonna hear our Rockabilly Junction's Number 8, which was named Number 8 because it was the 8th song they wrote. Doppler Effects Talking About Lightning, Amber Alexis and their song Even After the Rain, and Terry McCausland and his song Cruel Intentions. Terry is actually now a country artist. So he started out doing rock, and then he moved into a metal band, and now he's doing country. So just like this show started out as a live party in my living room, and now I'm doing it over the internet.
There you go. There you go.
But so again, make sure you head to whenwerockedphilly.com, pick up a copy of When We Rocked, the story of Philadelphia music scene, 1978 to 1992. Look, I did half of that without looking. And with that said, I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me tonight.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Appreciate it.
And congratulations on the book.
And congratulations to you in 21 years.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to head off into the evening. I will catch you guys next week when we were chatting with Utah from Shady Lady Studio about his 20-year anniversary. And it'll be after the anniversary show, so we'll get to hear the aftermath. And with that said, we will see you next week.